Let me read to you a passage from the second chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel, verses 1 to 12. It's the Gospel for the Feast of the Epiphany of the Lord. That's in January. St. Matthew writes, "After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the reign of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, 'Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east, and we have come to worship him.' When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. 'In Bethlehem in Judea,' they replied, 'for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will be the shepherd of my people Israel.' Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, 'Go and make a careful search for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him.' After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother, Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their own country by another route." That's from Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 to 12, for the Feast of the Epiphany of the Lord. What does it suggest to us? Well, many things, but one is Christ and evil. What do I mean? Let me begin this way. On December the 26th, 2004, there occurred the great earthquake below the Indian Ocean, with its epicenter off the west coast of Sumatra, Indonesia. It put into common language the term tsunami. It triggered a series of devastating tsunamis along the coasts of most land masses bordering the Indian Ocean, killing over 230,000 people in 14 countries, and inundating coastal communities with waves up to 30 meters high. It was one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history. Indonesia was the hardest hit, followed by Sri Lanka, India and Thailand. It was the third largest earthquake ever recorded on a seismograph. Among other things, it provoked a debate in the newspapers, as, for instance, in the Sydney Morning Herald, about the very existence of God. The usual questions were raised. If there is a God, he must be almighty and all-loving. But if God allows such a thing, how could he be loving? Or if he had to allow it, how could he be all-powerful? Well, you know, there is no final and clinching answer to these perennial questions. But of course, if we grant the existence of a God who is infinite, then in the nature of the case, there would have to be a great deal we could not understand about him. There are great and hidden evils going on all the time. There are vast numbers of abortions every year in Australia and far more in the United States, not considering those of numerous other countries of the world. Now that is a human tsunami of immense proportions. and it is man-made. Why does God not prevent so many from performing and undergoing this snuffing out of so much innocent human life? For that matter, why does God not prevent so many other forms of suffering and evil? Why does he sustain a world in which there is any suffering at all? We do not know. But let us remember what ought be obvious a priori, that if there is to be a God at all, we must not expect fully to understand his ways. We would have to expect mysteries in the governance of one who is infinite. As a matter of fact, he has revealed some things to us, such as the reason for the appearance of evil in the world. Evil did not come from God. St. Paul says that sin entered the world through one man, and with sin death, and death has spread to the whole human race. Sin and death spring ultimately, mysteriously, and somehow from man. The undying disharmony between man and his world, resulting in the world mistreating man and man mistreating the world, derives from man and his sin. How this is so is not revealed to us. But if we accept this revelation, it certainly shows how serious sin is, for sin has had this catastrophic effect. It has also been revealed that God has not willed what man did. Let that vast tsunami of several years ago remind us of the moral earthquake, the moral disharmony that the sin within man causes. Man's sinful desires, his anger, his lust, his sloth, his pride, continually cause tsunamis in the heart of man, destroying a life lived according to what is right. Now God has revealed not only the source of the disorder in man and his world, but also the means of a wonderful restoration. He has given the answer. "This is my beloved Son," he said. "Listen to him." Let us take our cue from the wise men from the East who came to reverence him at Bethlehem, and which we celebrate on the Feast of the Epiphany. Let us see them, and let us see in them a symbol of the nations finding in Jesus Christ the answer to the world's plight. If we want light on the mysteries of life, let all men contemplate Jesus Christ, seeking in him the light of life. If suffering bewilders us, well then, why did Christ himself have to suffer? Repeatedly our Lord said to his disciples that he had to suffer if he was to fulfill his mission and enter into his glory. No one's suffering was equal to his, because he was atoning for the sins of the whole world. Why did the Father allow this to happen? That his own Son, equal to himself in glory and divinity, should be made to suffer as he did? We are not told. It is a mystery. But what we are told is that out of that suffering came the redemption and sanctification of the human race, provided man accepts the offer of the gift. Man may ruin by his sin the work of God's hands, but God can bring unimagined good out of this terrible evil. Nothing is impossible for God. Like the wise men coming from the East, let the peoples contemplate the Redeemer. Let us all follow him, whatever be the cost. The wise men from the East came to Christ, gazed on him, and rendered him their homage. Let us constantly gaze on the life and figure of Jesus Christ. When we see or experience evils in our lives, and when vast sections of mankind experience evil, we can be sure that God is working to bring good out of that evil that he does not will. But the one condition for this to happen is that when evil comes our way, we hold on to Christ and endeavour to do God's will. Let us make Christ the source of our light and life, and do our best to manifest him to the world as the light of every man. Let us by our daily lives present him to others just as Mary and Joseph presented him to the Magi coming from the east.